Welcome to Craving the Heat, where desire takes the lead and every story leaves you wanting more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest naughty stories. I never imagined my life would spiral into the kind of mess that sounds like the plot of a trashy romance novel. I was 42, married to a man I thought I loved, living in a beautiful home in the Pacific Northwest. We had a decent life, not perfect, but solid. Or so I thought. My husband Robert had a son from a previous marriage. Ryan was 24, recently graduated from college, and had just moved back in with us while he figured out his next steps. He was polite, charming, and uncomfortably handsome, the kind of good-looking that made you glance twice, even if you didn't want to. I told myself I saw him as my stepson. Nothing more. But some lines don't fade, they blur. Robert traveled. Often for work, mergers, acquisitions, the usual corporate talk that meant I spent too many nights alone in a big house that echoed with silence. Ryan was there. Quiet at first, then warm. Funny, present. It started innocently enough. A movie night when Robert was away. Popcorn, wine, a blanket we shared. A laugh, a long look. And then the night that changed everything. A storm had knocked. Out power across the city, Robert was out of town. Our house, large and normally comfortable, felt eerie and cold. The guest bedrooms were drafty, so Ryan and I ended up camped out in the living room near the fireplace, where we spread out a few blankets and tried to make the best of it. We had too much wine. Too many glances. I can sleep on the floor. He said, "There's no room," I replied, trying to laugh it off. "Just lay down." He did. Right next to me. We didn't talk for a while, just stared into the fire. My heart pounded, not from fear or guilt, but something darker. Something more electric. I don't know who moved first. A touch on the arm, his hand brushing mine. The air between us thick with a kind of tension I hadn't felt in years. And then I landed on him. There's no poetic way to describe what happened. Next, it was messy, hot, wrong. I hated myself, even in the moment. And yet, I didn't stop. Neither did he. Afterward, we both sat there in silence. I could see it in his eyes, the panic, the realization. I tried to speak, but my throat felt tight, like I'd swallowed all the guilt, and it refused to go down. "We can't." I started, I know, he said quickly. He got up and left the room. The next day, he avoided me. I avoided him. But the damage was done. That line, the one between right and ruin, had been crossed, and it only took one more night of weakness for it to be crossed again. Then again. And again. Each time it felt more dangerous. And more addictive. We kept our secret for months. I told myself Robert didn't notice. That he was too busy, too preoccupied with work. But he did notice. He always noticed more than he let on. It all unraveled on Christmas Eve. We'd had a big dinner, just the three of us. Ryan was distant. I was anxious. Robert was watching. Later that night, after Robert went to bed, Ryan cornered me in the kitchen. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered. I nodded, heart sinking. I know. But Robert wasn't asleep. He came down the stairs silently, catching the tail end of our conversation. "What is it you can't do anymore, Ryan?" The blood drained from both our faces. Robert didn't scream. He didn't punch anyone. He just stood there, staring at me like I was a stranger. Then he walked out the front door. The fallout was swift and brutal. Ryan moved out the next day. I didn't hear from him for months. Robert filed for divorce within a week. I didn't fight it. What was there to fight for? I lost everything. The house, the marriage, even the fragile sense of identity I thought I had. Friends disappeared. Gossip spread like wildfire. I'd love to say I learned something noble from it all. That I emerged wiser, stronger. Maybe I did in a way. But the truth is murkier than that. It's not a clean story with a redemptive ending. It's a mess. A raw, aching human mess that I made with no one to blame but myself. But here's what I do know. Sometimes, the worst decisions don't come from hate or malice. They come from loneliness. from desperation, from that single tragic moment when there's no room and you land where you shouldn't. I used to think of myself as a good woman. Maybe not perfect. Who is? But decent, loyal, caring. The kind of woman who paid her bills on time, sent thank you notes, and remembered birthdays. I had worked hard all my life, built a career, and after a messy first marriage, I thought I'd finally found something. Solid when I met Robert. He was calm, reliable, a man with presence and purpose. We weren't passionate in that all-consuming, set the bed on fire way, but I didn't think I needed that anymore. I was in my 40s, tired of chaos. I wanted peace, predictability, the comfort of a steady hand and someone to come home to. Robert had a son from his first marriage, Ryan. I met him early on when he was in college. He was polite, distant, but never rude. He had that distracted, slightly cynical air that's smart. Attractive young men often have when they feel the world doesn't offer much worth being enthusiastic about. At the time, I thought of him as a kid. Just a boy, really. It wasn't until a few years later, after he graduated, after he moved back home, that everything started to shift out. At first, it was subtle. A lingering glance. A joke only the two of us seemed to understand. A shared bottle of wine that turned into 2. Then 3. I started noticing things I shouldn't. How his jaw had sharpened. How his voice had deepened. How his eyes lingered. Just a beat too long on mine. He'd lean in a little closer than necessary when asking a question, brush past me in the hallway with a touch that was maybe accidental. Maybe not. I told myself I was imagining it. That I was just lonely because I was. Robert was always traveling. Another deal. Another meeting. Always some urgent business taking him to another city. Another hotel room. Another time zone that kept him unreachable for days. When he was home, he was tired, distracted. Sometimes I talked to him over dinner and realized he hadn't heard a word I said. We didn't fight, we didn't do much of anything anymore. Just coexisted in the same house like friendly roommates with a shared mortgage. But Ryan was there. Present in a way his father wasn't. He'd ask questions, listen, laugh. He made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. And that attention, that dangerous little thrill of being noticed, it became intoxicating. Then the power went out. It was late October. A storm rolled in, hard and fast. The wind howled, trees bent. The rain came in sheets, and then, just like that, everything went dark. No electricity. No heat. Robert, of course, was in Chicago. Ryan and I found candles, lit a fire in the living room, and gathered blankets. The guest bedrooms were like ice boxes. The only warm spot was right there near the fireplace. I can sleep on the floor, he said, tossing down a pillow. There is no room, I said before I could stop myself. He looked at me, then nodded slowly. Okay, we lay side by side. Under a large blanket, not touching but too close. Far too close, the fire crackled. I stared at it, pretending my heart wasn't racing. Pretending I didn't feel his warmth just inches from me. I always liked storms, he said softly. Why? They make things feel suspended. Like time's not real for a little while. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The air between us was thick, charged with something neither of us wanted to name. Then his hand brushed mine. Just a whisper of contact. It would have been nothing, easily ignored. If I had wanted to ignore it, I didn't. I turned to face him. His eyes met mine. Neither of us spoke. And then I kissed him, or he kissed me. I honestly don't remember who moved first. Just that our mouths met like magnets, like it had been inevitable, like we'd both been standing on the edge of a cliff waiting for a gust of wind. The kiss deepened. Our hands explored. The blanket shifted. I didn't think. I just reacted. I landed on him, my body pressed against his, and in that moment, nothing else existed. Afterwards, the silence was deafening. I sat up, pulled the blanket around myself, unable to meet his eyes. My body was buzzing. My brain was screaming, we can't, I said finally. I know, he replied. He got up and left the room. The next morning, everything looked normal. The power had returned. The sky was clear. Robert called to say his flight had been delayed another day, but nothing felt normal anymore. I avoided Ryan all morning, but when we crossed paths in the kitchen, he looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Guilt? Regret? Want? It didn't matter. We both knew what had happened. And worse, we both knew it wasn't over. And at WASN single quotes T. What started as a single, shameful night spiraled into something else. We told ourselves it wouldn't happen again, that it was a mistake, that we had to stop. But we didn't stop. It happened again in the laundry room. Then in the backseat of my car on a rainy night. Then in his bedroom when Robert was gone on. Another week-long trip to San Francisco. Every time we swore it would be the last. Every time we fell harder. I hated myself. I loved the way he looked at me. I lived in a state of emotional whiplash. Ashamed, euphoric, terrified, hungry. We became experts at pretending. Smiles at the dinner table. Casual conversation. Avoiding eye contact around Robert. It was a game, and every day we played it felt like we were inching closer to disaster. The tension became unbearable. Ryan started to pull away. He grew distant, snappish. I'd find him sitting alone, headphones in, avoiding me. I tried to confront him once, and he just said, "This isn't real, you know." But it felt real to me. Then came Christmas. We were supposed to have a quiet evening, just the three of us. Dinner, gifts, maybe a movie. Ryan was silent the whole night. I was on edge. Robert seemed unusually watchful. After dinner, I went into the kitchen to clean up. Ryan followed. "We have to stop," he whispered, eyes pleading. "I can't live like this." "I know," I said. "I know." And then Robert walked in. He didn't say anything right away. Just stood there, looking at us. Something in his face broke. Something quiet, something final. "What is it you can't live with, Ryan?" No one moved. I felt my blood turn cold. Robert looked at me. "You've been sleeping with my son." It wasn't a question. He didn't scream. He didn't throw anything. He just turned around and walked out. That was the last time we were ever in the same room. Ryan moved out the next morning. Robert filed for divorce before New Year's. I stayed in the house for a while alone. Eventually I moved to a small apartment across town. I lost most of my friends. They chose sides, and it wasn't mine. I don't blame them. Ryan never contacted me. I never reached out. I think about him sometimes. I think about the firelight, the storm, the nights filled with secrets. I think about the line we crossed, how easy it was to step over it, how hard it's been to live with the aftermath. I'm not proud of what I did, but I don't regret the feeling, the one moment where I felt wanted, needed, seen. It came at a cost I'll carry for the rest of my life. There was no room that night. So I landed on my stepson. And everything broke. The days after Robert left were a blur of numbness. At first, I thought he might come back. Not to reconcile, I knew. Better, but maybe to shout, to confront me, to unleash the fury I thought I deserved. But there was no confrontation, just a letter from his lawyer. A neatly typed list of assets. A silence that stretched across the weeks like a wire pulled tight, humming with what was never said. Ryan vanished too. No goodbye, no final conversation. Not even a text. One day he was there, the next he was gone. The room he'd been staying in was stripped bare except for a single black hoodie hanging in the closet. I didn't touch it. I kept the door closed. I told myself I would get over it. That time would dull the sharp edges. That I would put this all behind me, like people always claim they do in novels and movies, but grief doesn't work like that. Not when it's mixed with guilt. Not when it's the kind of loss you can't tell anyone about. I couldn't cry to my sister or pour my heart out over wine with friends. What was I supposed to say? I slept with my stepson, I destroyed my marriage, and now I miss him more than I can stand. So I swallowed it every day. I went to work. I smiled when I needed to. I signed the divorce papers. I sold the house. The apartment I moved into was sterile and small, a single bedroom, white walls, a balcony that overlooked a parking lot instead of a garden. I told people I wanted to downsize, that I was embracing simplicity. The truth was I couldn't stand the memories carved into the walls of that house. Sometimes at night, I would wake up sweating, heart racing, having dreamt of him, dreams where we never got caught, dreams where we ran away together, dreams where he looked at me with something like love instead of panic. And sometimes I dreamt of Robert. The look in his eyes that night in the kitchen, the betrayal, the disbelief. I had wounded him in a way I would never fully understand. Not just by being unfaithful, but by destroying something sacred between father and son. I broke something between them that would never heal. 6 months passed, then 7. Then, nearly a year, I heard from mutual friends that Ryan had moved to Portland, working freelance in graphic design, living with roommates, trying to stay under the radar. I almost messaged him more times than I can count. I even typed it out once, just one line. "Are you okay?" But I never hit send. I wanted to believe leaving him alone was the right thing, the responsible thing. But if I was honest with myself, I was afraid that he'd say he hated me. Or worse, that he didn't doubt it was in the 11th month, almost a full year after it all began, when I saw him again. I was at a bookstore downtown, not looking for anything in particular, just trying to waste an hour in a place that smelled like old paper and escape. I was flipping through a hardcover when I heard his voice. He was behind me, laughing with someone. I turned slowly, unsure if I even should. He looked different, older. His hair was a little longer, his face more angular. He wore a brown corduroy jacket and thin wire-framed glasses. He hadn't seen me yet. I stood frozen, watching him talk to a girl, petite, sharp features, laughing at something. He'd said I should have left right then, should have turned and walked out the door, but I didn't. He noticed me. Our eyes met. Everything stopped. The girl kept talking, oblivious. He froze mid-sentence. His mouth opened slightly, as if to say something, but nothing came out. I gave him the smallest nod, then turned and walked away. He didn't follow. That night, I lay in bed and cried harder than I had in months. There was something so cruel about seeing him happy, whole without me, and yet I wanted that for him. I did. I truly did. But part of me also wanted him to hurt, to ache like I had, to miss me, to regret nothing and everything all at once. A week later, I received an email from an unknown address. It was one sentence. I still dream about that night. No name, no subject line. Just that dot. I stared at the screen for hours, reading it again. And again, I never replied. Instead, I printed it out and folded it into the back of a book I keep hidden in my closet. We never spoke again after that. Not really. There were a few sightings. A friend who said they saw him at a gallery, a social media post I stumbled on late at night before I unfollowed him entirely. But the message was clear. Our chapter was closed, and yet, sometimes on quiet nights, when the city is asleep and the wind presses against my windows like it did that first night, I remember the weight of his body under mine, the firelight dancing on the walls, the sound of his breath in my ear. I remember the heat, the hunger, the terrible, beautiful mistake of it all. And I wonder if I could go back, knowing how it would end, knowing the ruin that would follow, would I still let myself fall? Part of me wants to say no, but the truth is harder to admit. The truth is, even now, I'm not sure. People think time heals. That's the phrase they love. Time heals all wounds. But I don't believe that anymore. Time just teaches you how to carry the wound without screaming. After the divorce, I tried dating. Nothing serious. A few coffees that turned into dinners that turned into awkward kisses at my door, then silence. No one ever really got past the surface. Not because they weren't kind. Some of them were. But because they weren't him, Ryan lived inside me like a ghost. I couldn't exorcise him, couldn't kill the memory. Couldn't rewrite the moment everything in my life splintered. It would come back at the most unexpected times, in a stranger's cologne, in the music that played in some cafe, in the warm press of summer heat on my bare skin, in the feel of flannel against my cheek when I tried to sleep. For years, we never spoke again. His name became radioactive in my mind. I avoided mutual friends, deleted old photos, boxed up every piece of that time and buried it under the clutter of my new life. I even tried therapy. I lied through most of it. I told my therapist I had a hard time letting go of shame, that I'd made mistakes in my marriage, that I betrayed someone. I never said my stepson. I never said I fell in love with him. In the shadows of a life I built too late. Still, the therapist asked once, "Do you think you deserve forgiveness?" I didn't answer. I didn't think I did. Then, 2.5 years after it all fell apart, my sister convinced me to come with her to a weekend retreat on the Oregon coast. Yoga, meditation, digital detox, the kind of thing she loved and I used to roll my eyes at, I almost didn't go, but something in me, maybe boredom, maybe the slow ache of loneliness, said yes. The retreat was held in a quiet lodge built into the cliffs, ocean below, pines above. Peaceful, haunting in the way only wild nature can be. The silence out there didn't feel empty. It felt intentional. On the second day, I went for a walk along the bluff. The wind was sharp, whipping against my jacket. I needed to move, to think, to breathe without being watched or instructed to. Open my heart chakra, and that's when I saw him. It was unmistakable. He was standing at the edge of a path overlooking the waves, hands in his coat pockets, the same slouch of his shoulders, the same jawline now dusted with stubble and age. He turned, slowly, as if sensing someone behind him. Our eyes met. There was no dramatic music, no running into each other's arms, just quiet. He looked at me like he'd been seeing me in dreams, and now wasn't sure if I was real. I didn't say anything. Neither did he. We just stood there, wind between us. Finally, he spoke. "I thought I'd imagined you." I swallowed. My voice was barely a whisper. I almost thought the same. We sat down on a weathered bench, not too close, but not far. He told me he was there with friends, not for the retreat, just a weekend away. We talked about meaningless things at first, where we lived now, what work looked like, the ocean, the weather. Small talk hiding the sharp truth beneath it all. He glanced at me after a while, then said, "You look good." "You too," I said, though it wasn't quite true. He looked older, harder, but there was still something boyish in his eyes, something unfinished. "I almost messaged you," he said, "so many times." "I know," I said. I figured. "I don't know. That you were better off without that, without me." I didn't know how to answer, because part of me had tried to be better off, and part of me had never stopped missing him. He looked out over the ocean. "You ever think about it? About what happened?" "Every day." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "I hate that we hurt him, my dad." "I know," I whispered. "Me too. But I don't hate that it happened," he said. "Do you?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to say yes, that I regretted every second, that I'd erase it if I could, but the words caught in my throat. "No," I said. "I don't hate it." There was a pause, a long one, and I realized my hand was resting just a few inches from his. I didn't move it. Neither did he. He turned to me, his face unreadable. "I still remember that night, the storm, the fire, the way you looked at me. You didn't look like someone's wife. You looked like you." I felt a tear slip down my cheek. Unexpected. I wasn't trying to be anyone else that night, I said. We sat there for over an hour talking, not talking. watching the seas shift and foam and crash against the rocks. He didn't ask for anything. Neither did I, but when we stood to go, we didn't go our separate ways. We walked side by side back to the lodge. Our hands touched once. He didn't pull away, and when we reached the door, I turned to him. You staying another night? I asked. He nodded. So, am I said. Neither of us said what we were thinking. Neither of us needed to. That night, in a small room with thin walls and a single window facing the sea, we made love again. It wasn't wild or desperate like before. It was slower, sadder, gentler. Not the fire of forbidden's lust, but the ache of something long buried, unearthed, and breathing. Afterwards, we lay in silence, and I rested my head on his chest. I listened to his heartbeat and let my hand trace slow lines across his ribs. He smelled like salt and cedar. His fingers brushed my hair, not possessively, but reverently. Do you think we ever stopped loving each other? I asked quietly. He sighed. No, I think we just got really good at pretending. We both knew it couldn't last. There were too many broken pieces behind us. Too much history we couldn't rewrite. Too much pain we'd caused to ever have something clean. But for that weekend, that one small slice of time, we let ourselves stop pretending. When I left, we didn't say goodbye. He kissed my cheek. I kissed his hand. We didn't make promises. We didn't need to. I don't know if I'll see him again. Maybe that was the last time. Maybe it wasn't, but I carry it with me not as a scar, but as a secret room inside my heart. A room where the fire is still burning, where the storm still rages, and where there's just enough space for a memory to lie down beside a mistake. Because even now, all these years later, I can still feel the night I landed on him, and I know I never really got back up.